Hello everyone, in this video I would like to show how can we implement the OPC UA Client function in Beckhoff TwinCAT 3 system. And in this test, I will use Siemens S7-1200 PLC running as OPC UA server, and I will use my laptop running as TwinCAT 3 PLC and the OPC UA Client. So we can set up the communication between the Beckhoff and the Siemens, and we can communicate each other via the OPC UA function. And the Beckhoff side will run as OPC UA Client, the master function. To check out the detailed information for the OPC UA Client, you can find out the Beckhoff information system, find out this hierarchy, TwinCAT 3, TF functions, and find out TF6000 connectivity. The OPC UA is called TF6100. And at here, technical introduction, it shows for the OPC UA server, ClientIO, and client OPC Open, they all shown here. Also, you can find the samples program from here, samples. And if you click this link from the GitHub, you can download this sample program. Within this sample program, you can see the OPC UA server samples, ClientIO demo program, and client PLC Open demo program. And if you recall, I used two videos show how can we implement OPC UA server. And this time, I would like to show how can we implement the OPC UA client function. And the OPC UA client function allows TwinCAT PLC can send the data or receive the data from another station or from another PLC. That PLC also support OPC UA server function. For example, in this case, I will use the TwinCAT 3 PLC running as an OPC client function, and the other side I will use Siemens PLC S7-1200. The S7-1200 is version 4.4. It has OPC UA server function. So these two different brand CPU can communicate each other using OPC UA. From my channel, you can find out the existing videos showing how can we implement the OPC UA server function from Siemens TIA Portal S7-1200 PLC and the Beckhoff system. How can we implement the OPC UA server TF6100? So if you go to my channel, Electrical Automation Hands-On, and go to the playlist and find out Industry Automation Data Collection. And if you search COM25, OPC UA Siemens S7-1200 PLC running OPC UA server function. So here, this video. And I published almost 2 years ago. So this video shows how can we implement the OPC UA server function in Siemens S7-1200 PLC. Especially in this test, the S7-1200 PLC will run as OPC UA server. And also, if you check out how can we implement the OPC UA server function in Beckhoff system, so you can find another two videos in this playlist. If you go up, find out the COM08A and 08B, especially the COM08B. This is the recent one video I published. So here, in this video, I showed how can we implement the OPC UA. I used one actual Beckhoff controller, C6030, that run as an OPC UA server function. These three videos show how can we implement the OPC UA server function. But in this video, I will show how can we implement the ClientIO, the OPC UA client function in Beckhoff system. Using this function, it allows us to set up the communication between two different PLC brands, especially this ClientIO function. This ClientIO function allows us almost without any program. So we can set up the OPC UA client function in Beckhoff system, which is very easy. Basically, we just need to do the configuration. Alright, let's go to the Beckhoff TwinCAT 3 system at first. So let's set up the TwinCAT PLC project and config the OPC UA client. Alright, let's set up the project first. After we open the TwinCAT 3 software, we can click File and click New. We set up the new project. Okay, I will set up my project under this directory. And I will name this TwinCAT project OPC UA ClientIO. Keep in mind, There are basically two methods to implement OPC UA client in Beckhoff system. One is named ClientIO. We use configuration way to set up the client function. Another way is called Client PLC Open. Basically, we need program the connection, send, receive that program. I will use another video in future to show that how can we implement that. But personally, I will recommend we can use this way. After all, this is quite easy. Okay, so ClientIO. Okay, after we set up this project, let's go to the PLC and set up new item. Set up one PLC project. Okay, the same directory, we can name that OPC UA ClientIO. Okay, click this standard PLC project. Let's add. Okay, after we set up this PLC project, and then we will use the OPC UA ClientIO function at here under the IO area. So from this device, we can right click this add new item. And from this list, we can see here, it shows OPC UA. And we can click this virtual OPC UA device. This run as OPC UA client as a virtual station. So this run as the agent. This agent can communicate with the OPC UA server and also a transfer to IO style. So this allows us to configure the OPC UA very easy. Okay, we can click OK. You can see it named OPC UA virtual. Right click, click add a new item. So we will add the OPC UA client or subscriber or publisher. So in this case, I will use the OPC UA client because our aim is to set up the communication between this client and the OPC UA server. The OPC UA server is a Siemens S7-1200 PLC. Okay, we click this OPC UA client. All right. We can double click this client and we can see here the endpoint URL. If you did the OPC UA communication before, definitely this is very familiar with this. The endpoint URL, basically here we will configure the OPC UA server the address. And from this security policy here, we can select the security policy and the mode, right? And after we configure the endpoint URL address, and as long as this client system can communicate with the OPC UA server, after we click this add nodes, this software can browse all the tags from that OPC UA server. If this connection can set up successfully, so after we click this nodes, we can browse the tags from the OPC UA server. This is a pre-verify if client can communicate with the server successfully. And also here, there's a login configuration. Usually, we will select this anonymous. For some cases, if you need the username to higher security, you can select the username. It depends on the security level in your project. All right, so now it's the time to shift to the OPC UA server side, the Siemens TI Portal system. This is a Siemens TI Portal project, and currently, I'm using TI Portal version 16 for this demonstration. In this test, I will briefly go through the configuration rather than explain the detail. To check out the detail, again, you can find out the COM01. You can check out my channel, the COM1, OPC UA Siemens S7-1200 PLC running as an OPC UA server. I will paste a link under this video. Alright, I will briefly go through the important setting to implement the OPC UA server function at the Siemens PLC side. So firstly, let's go to the device configuration. Okay, currently I'm using Siemens S7-1200 1214 DC that's PLC. And keep in mind, to implement OPC UA function using S7-1200 PLC, their firmware must be greater or equal to version 4.4. Okay, and to quickly review the important setting, firstly, let's review the IP address setting. After you double click this Ethernet port, the IP address in my project, that's the 192.168.1.181. Okay, this is IP address. And then let's activate the OPC UA server function. Double click the CPU, and from this general list here, so you'll find OPC UA here. Double click the OPC UA. Okay, and here you must check activate this active OPC UA server. This will active the OPC UA server for this S7-1200 controller. And here, this is very important, the server address. This is the URL address we need to type in into the OPC UA client side for the endpoint URL address. That is this OPC TCP and PLC IP address, and here the port, that is a 4840. Okay, this is very important. And other than that, let's go to look at the security setting and go down, and we can see for the port we are using 4840. Basically for the OPC UA communication, the typical port is 4840. And this timeout, if in case you are using the remote connection, for example, you are going through the VPN through a very long distance communication, keep in mind, some cases the timeout you can set a little bit higher. Okay, and then go down, find out the security area. Firstly, this server certificate, so you need to generate add new active one server certificate here. And then let's drop down, go down, and find out this security policies. And in this case, I active this 3 as the example. So we will use no security. For test purpose, we can select this no security. And in case you need some security setting, you can active the security level you need. And then let's go down. The trust clients here is very important. I will recommend for test purpose, you can check active this, make sure this check out. So automatically accept the client certificates, because when a client go to set up the communication with this OPC UA server here, so the server side need to accept this client certificate, especially while using the security, the level in case you need some level at here. So basically you need to add, or you can manually add the client side. So, but when we set up the communication at the early beginning, we don't know which client need to communicate with this server. I would recommend you active this automatically accept. Okay, let's scroll down. So for this enable guest authentication, a active. Okay. And in case you need the user and the user password, so you can active this enable and configure the user and the username. If you recall from the OPC UA client side, we could also use the user and the username. Also, we can use the anonymous. So by default, we can use the anonymous. Okay. And another thing, keep in mind, to implement the OPC UA client function, you need to purchase the license from Siemens. And so here you can see for the S7-1200 PLC, you can purchase the license OPC UA S7-1200 basic, the license. You select this. For the test purpose, you can temporarily active this and download to the controller and test this function. But if you are doing the official project, you need to purchase the license. Okay. This is the configuration. Basically, we just need to active this OPC UA server and copy and backup this URL, this address to somewhere else, and go through the security setting that associated with your project requirements. Okay. And which kind of data we need to communicate or that can provide from the server side. Then let's go to the OPC UA communication, this folder here. Okay. After you active the OPC UA server, you can see something will be here. And if this is the first time for you to configure, so you can double click this add new server interface. So using this server interface, that will be very easy for the client to browse the tag. So this interface can run as the organizer. So under this organizer, double click, you can see those tags are the tags can provide from the OPC UA server. All right, and if this is the first time for you to configure this, to briefly go through, so create 1 dB under the program block. For example, in my case, I'm using the dB100, and within this dB100, I set up the real value, the date 1 to 10. So those data will be used as the test purpose. And it's the initial value here from 11 to 20. This is start value. Once we download this program, the default value for those data 1 to 10, their value will be those. Okay, and also I'm using the dB200 here, one sine X and sine Y. And I programmed one simple demonstration program. The sine X is changing itself, and we can see while the X is changing, the Y is also changing. So it's calculating there. The program, I programmed under the cyclic interrupt here. This is cyclic interrupt, and this sine X will be added itself 0.2 every time this interrupt is called. And here I'm using the sine calculation, calculate the sine X to sine Y. Okay, and under this server interface here, if you want to share one data from those dB, you can browse the data from those dB. As we can see here, the sine X and Y, that date 1 to date 10, right? And then you can drag the tag you want to share as OPC UA server and drag to here. And then this interface run as a bridge, connect the OPC UA data to our DB. Okay, this is the interface. All right, this is the OPC UA server side on the Siemens, this side. Now I'm going to compile and download this controller and start this controller. From this watch list, I drag the DB variable, the date 1 to date 10, and the sine X and the sine Y here. Now I'm gonna go to click this online monitor. All right, we can see the sine X is changing itself, and because it's a sine calculation, the sine Y is showing here. Okay, they are moving here, and the initial value from the date 1 to date 10, that start from 11, 12, 13 to 20 here. And once we use the client to set up the communication with this OPC UA server, so from the client side, we should see those data. Also, if we browse sine X or sine Y, we can see they are changing there. Okay, and again, to reveal the URL address, and keep in mind that the URL for this OPC UA server, that is the opc.tcp, and this IP address, and the port is the 4840. Okay, so let's shift to the Beckhoff OPC UA ClientIO side. All right, we shift back the TwinCAT OPC UA ClientIO side. And from here, let's manually type in that URL address opc.tcp and the port number. Keep in mind, this is the URL from the OPC UA server side. Here, we can select the security policy. And in this case, I'm going to select the none, so for test purpose. And from the server side, you definitely need to do some security level, so you can select that need to match with the OPC UA server side. And in this case, for testing purpose, I will select none. Okay, and here, click this add nodes to verify if we can browse the tag from the OPC UA server side. Click. Okay, it shows the browse succeed. That means from this system, it can browse the OPC UA server, that S7-1200 PLC. Okay, and then from this objects here, and we can see this is the OPC UA server S7-1200 I set up, and especially for this server interface. Okay, if you recall, the interface server interface underscore S7-1200 N1, that's the interface we set up. And under this interface folder, we can see the date 1 to date 10, and the sine X and sine 1, also the test data A, test data 2, also some miscellaneous data here. And then we can click the data we are going to browse from the client side. Okay, for example, I will pick those data and click OK. After this, we can see it set up this server interface, and this is the entire OPC UA that address. Also, we can see this node ID. If you did the OPC UA project before, you will see the NS address and I address here. Okay, and this is the server interface. This is the interface. If we quickly review from the OPC UA server side and from the TI portal side, the OPC UA communication here, this is that server interface. And under this server interface, and we can see all those data we just browsed from the OPC UA client side. Okay, this is server interface name, S7-1200 N1, and those data. Okay, so let's shift back to the Beckhoff side. So we successfully browsed all those tags from the OPC UA server side. And for each tag, if we click this small button here, and if we click this value, and then go to the online, so currently we haven't downloaded this project yet, so that's why this value shows 0. And once we download this project, we can see the data. Okay, and this is the client, this client 1, this instant client 1, this configuration. And then let's go to the device 1 here, go to the setting here. We can see a task configuration. Here we can select which PLC task we can select. By default, it's using this device 1 OPC UA virtual task 58. Okay, after we click this apply, so this task will serve for this OPC UA client. And then the next question, how can we configure this OPC UA virtual task 58? Where we can find that? Then we can go to the system here, find out this task. So after we configure this area, this device 1, this task will show up here. And by default, this cyclic task is using 40 milliseconds as its cyclic tick. Some purpose, if you do need faster, so you can select the shorter. But most of cases, for the OPC UA communication, basically the cycle time will be 100 or 200 milliseconds. So we do not need to set it too high. 40, that will be fine. And also keep in mind from this client, this area, you can select the read cycle time and the write cycle time. Okay, and now we can download this project. Before we download, we can go to the real time. And we do need a setup here because I'm using my laptop running this PLC project, this TwinCAT PLC project. Also, my laptop running as this OPC UA client. If you have one external the Beckhoff controller in hand, so the only difference is here from this drop-down list, this connection drop-down list. Select the controller you can connect. And if you're using your laptop for this test, so you can select this local. Okay, and click this read from the target and select this isolated. Okay, and select this set on target. So in my case, my laptop has 4 cores here. I'm using this isolated core run this entire project. Okay, and after this, also we need to check out the license. To run this OPC UA, we are using this PLC project. We need 2 licenses at least. One is TC1200, that's the TC3, TwinCAT 3 PLC license. Another one is the TF6100. This is the OPC UA license. If there's no TF6100 showing here, you can go to the Manager license and browse, select the 6100 here. Click this CPU license here. For the test purpose, so you can click this 7 days trial license. And if you are doing the official project, you can purchase the license and then license your project. I also used one video before showing how can we license the PLC. How can we license one controller? I will also paste a link under this video. And after the license active and after you configure this real-time core, and we can download this project. Okay, click this downstairs active configuration. Okay, restart. All right, after we see this, that means the TwinCAT, this controller is running. Till now, you can see we haven't programmed any PLC code yet. So that's why we do not need to click this login temporarily. That's because while using this OPC UA client, this ClientIO method, that only need us to configure this IO, the configuration, and then link the PLC tag. So we do not need any PLC program to set up the OPC UA connection and send the data or receive the data. All the data are cyclic. And now to briefly verify if this communication is doing there, so we can go to here. First, let's go to the sign X here because the sign X is moving itself there. So now let's go to this input and click this value. And from this online, we can see from this OPC UA client side, we can monitor this value. This value is changing there. Also for the sign Y, from this value online, we can see it's changing there. That means this client can see the value, can read the value. Okay, and also we can browse this data 1. Go to the value, we can see the 11 from this data 1 is showing here. And if we are going to set the value for this data, we can go to the output here, click this value, and go to this online here. And from here, we can set the value, click this write. We can write the 120. Under this float here, we can write 120, click OK. We write 120. And from this input, we can also see the 120, we can read this 120. And in the meantime, if we go to the OPC UA server side, we can see the 120 showing the data 1. So this is the TIA portal side, and let's use the watch list, the watch table. Okay, and here we can see the data 1 is showing 120. Okay, and now if I change this data 2, 12, from 12 to 600, for example, click this modify. So we can see the 620 is showing the data 2 now. Then let's go to the OPC UA client side to verify if that 600 can showing at the data 2. Okay, this is data 1. Let's go to the data 2. Okay, from this input here, click this value, we can see 600 is showing here, which means the OPC UA client communicate with the OPC UA server successfully. This Beckhoff PLC and the Siemens PLC, they are using the OPC UA function to communicate, to exchange the data here. Okay, this is a hardware configuration and online monitor. To do a little bit further, we can go to the GVL here. We can declare the variable, and then we can link the variable at here. That's a very common way I/O under the PLC. If you use the TwinCAT 3 project before, that's very easy for you. You can go to the value, variable, link the variable. Okay, let me demonstrate how can we do that briefly. So we can go to the GVL, select this global variable list, select the OPC UA Okay, under this var global, we can declare the IO variables. Keep in mind, all those IO belongs to the IO variable, so we need to declare the variable as input or output. For example, we can declare two real values to connect the data 1 and the data 2. OPC UA Client. To declare this data 1 as the OPC UA data input, we can declare as the AT percent input %I input start. And the data type, that's the real. Okay, this is for data 1. And for the data 2, we can declare it as the output. So the second one R. We are going to use this variable as the output value. So we will declare it as the %Q start. And data type still the real. And for this sign X and the sign Y, we just read from the OPC UA server. So we will declare them as the input. Okay, we declare those 4 IO variables. And keep in mind, we need to build the solution. Okay, after we build the solution, and then we will link all those variables at here. So firstly, let's link this data 1. The data 1, this is input. So we can find the data 1 first and find out this input. Go to the value and click this link 2. So we can see here, we declare 3 input. So for this data 1 here, that is the IO input. For this input here, click OK. After we click this link 2, so we can see this icon showing here. That means we connect something here. And for this data 2, since this data 2, that's the Q, the output, so we can connect to this data 2, the output here. Okay, go to the data 2 output, click this value, link 2. So we can see this is the data 2 OPC UA client. Click OK. Okay, and for the sign X and the sign Y, the similar idea, go to the input value, link, click this sign X. For this sign Y, similar idea, input value, link 2. Okay, click this sign Y. Okay, we finish those 4 variables link here. Then let's download the configuration. Build the solution and download active the hardware configuration. Okay, let's log in the project. So after we log in, all those variables will be downloaded to the PLC. So from this online monitoring list, we monitor this OPC UA IO, this global variable list. So we can monitor the value here. Since the data 2, that's the output Q. So now we can set a value here. For example, if we set the 567.23. So we set this value, click this write value. Then we can verify if this value writes successfully to the OPC UA server side. Then let's go to the TI portal. Then we can see for this data 2 here, this value 567.23 is received successfully. And in the meantime, we can also change the data for the data 1 again. So for example, we change to 3.14. Okay, click this write 3.14. Okay, and let's go to the OPC UA client side. All right, this is the Beckhoff OPC UA client side. 3.14 is received successfully here. And meantime, we can see this sign X and sign Y is changing here, which means all those data are communicated successfully with the OPC UA server side. So this Beckhoff PLC and Siemens S7-1200 PLC, they are communicating successfully. As we can see, we do not need to program any OPC UA Connect, read or write program. We just did some configuration here. Also, from the OPC UA server side, we just need to do some configuration and use the link IO method. We can set up the OPC UA client function. And here, we set up the connection for the IO. We can use the link IO, allows these 2 different PLC, they can exchange the data. Again, let's quickly review from the OPC UA client method. So in this video, we use the TF6100 OPC UA ClientIO method to implement this OPC UA client function. And to check out the detail, you could read the explanation from this Beckhoff information system under this hierarchy, TwinCAT 3, this 6100 OPC UA, and this ClientIO. And probably I will use another video to show how can we use client PLC open function. So as we can see, the OPC open, we need to program the UA connect, the UA read, and the UA write. Also, we could have other function block we can use. But for the client IO, we do not need to program anything, which is very convenient. I highly recommend you could do this simple implementation. And keep in mind, you need to active the trial license and do this OPC UA client IO test. Alright, that's it for today. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please give me a thumb up. If you like to watch more videos in my channel, Please subscribe and hit the bell. Thank you for watching.